First up, we have...
Maybe you want to, everybody was here.
Oh, I'm sorry, roll call. Right. Want to start?
Maria Berman,
Brian Barabee.
Liz Lucluse,
Jim Stone.
Janet Pesatoro.
And Carol Gumbright.
Okay. Now can I start with Broomfield? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we have Broomfield 164 Still River Road who asked to be continued.
Right,
So
so,
just make a motion to continue?
yeah, but, so the point is that they asked to be continued to a date after our next meeting.
Oh, okay.
And so I thought maybe we could have a little discussion on the meeting dates,
Okay.
because now that we have Liz and now that Jim's learned that he's not going to be away as long, it might be possible to fit in some additional meetings.
Right, probably. I don't have my calendar here, but if on the original doodle poll, if I said I could make days, I probably still can.
So let me just find that.
It might be worth resubmitting the poll now.
Yeah.
Well, it's just for purposes of continuing this
Oh,
meeting,
yeah,
if we can
yeah,
just
we need to have
determine.
it, right.
So what we had, if we were to do a first and third Tuesday, which would be the 3rd, October 21st, I only had Maria and Brian saying that they could attend.
Mm.
Now Jim can,
Yes.
and Liz,
I can.
she can. So we could have a quorum and we could have a meeting on the 21st.
Mhm.
So that would work out. I also did not have a quorum on November 4th, and Maria, you were not going to be able to attend.
yeah, it's a voting day. You said, will we have a meeting?
Yeah, they said we still could.
Yeah, the 4th was a problem for me.
Okay, so Liz, is the 4th a problem for you?
No.
Okay. So then we could add the 21st and the 4th, and then we'd have 2 meetings in October, 2 meetings in November. And then I didn't go as far out as December, to be honest. Although I have, we did have a quorum for December 2nd. We didn't have one for the 3rd Tuesday, which would be December 16th. I didn't have you available, Janet.
Mhm.
Do you know offhand, Liz, or would we have to wait? You don't know offhand that far?
I'm not traveling, so.
Okay. So, let me put it down, so we could meet on the 21st with Jim, Liz, Maria, and Brian, and you'll double check.
Yeah.
And then November 4th, Liz can join us, that'll make a quorum, but no Maria. And then on the 16th, we think, actually, I'll just have to double check with you guys on that one.
16th of December?
Yeah. So then we'd have 2 meetings each of the months until we
Nice,
hit
yeah.
the new year.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
So we're moving them to the 21st, is that
Yeah,
it?
we continue Broomfield to the 21st then?
Sure.
Okay.
So let's get that in.
So is that something I have to make a motion for, or do we just do it?
No, they requested it. So, but what time? I'll continue to 7 p.m. again?
Sure. We don't have anything else there?
Okay, so we have a half an hour before the next one was scheduled, so we can take up other business.
Well, we could just, we can't
You
open it.
can't
close
open it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So do we want to, do you have any preference of where we start? Do you want to go to Five Shire or?
I would do the other wetland ones if we could do those first, just kind of fill out the categories. So we had Costa.
Oh, I thought they were going to be here, no?
No, because it's not a hearing.
So Costa 248 Harvard Road, annual report on mitigation planting and request for release of funds. And you were going to go check, I think, too.
Yeah, so tonight I stopped by, I had received a report from Andre and Marta Costa, and I'll pass it around, but briefly, in the fall, they had worked with the commission for some after-the-fact work that they had started removing vegetation, and they had received an order of conditions to restore that area as well as continue a stone retaining wall and finish the yard work that they started. And it was decided, the commission decided during that meeting that they were going to plant like 8 plants for mitigation. But they decided to go to wetland plants out in Amherst, was that the company? New England Wetland Plants. And they sell small, so really small plants, but at a much cheaper price. So they planted 55. So, and they did alternating pairs of bayberry, American hazelnut, winterberry, and mountain holly.
What a nice mix.
Yeah. They've had some trouble with some of the hazelnut. Some of them
They're
didn't.
not a wetland.
No, it's not in the well. It's right on the edge of their
But
yard.
they're not- that's like a dry upland type plant anyway. But
Yeah.
It's funny that they got it.
They have some that have survived, but they've had some trouble with that one, and some of the mountain holly has had a little bit of trouble. But the, so he says 46 out of the 55 have survived, 36 out of that 46 are thriving, and they were finding that there was some, he's calling it hemlock strangling the top. I think he means the bittersweet, but, because they had a lot of bittersweet there. Anyway, so they put a natural bark mulch down, no chemicals, no dye in it or anything. And since they did that, they say it's just really helped keep the other vegetation from outcompeting it, and it's done a good job. So there's still, he says there's the fate of 10 plants still unknown, but they do feel optimistic that those will survive. And so anyway, based on the site visit that I conducted today and their report, I would recommend we issue, after this first year, half of their surety escrow, which would be $552. So you should make a motion on that.
Okay, I make a motion that we issue Costa half of their surety escrow after the first 50 year, based on Carol's report.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So when I send around bills, I put that on there just to get it into the pipeline. So we can talk about Century Mill next.
Okay, Century Mill Estates, Plum Hill Road, to Century Mill Road, request for relief of surety funds. Release, did I say relief?
Probably requesting both, but in this case, you're
Not requesting relief.
So if you remember, back in July, we had a request from Brandon on behalf of the developer to release surety for a number of the Aura restoration areas that they had planted. And one of the areas, well, it had gone through 2 growing seasons, essentially. It hadn't been for the 2 years, and so September was when we said, we'll consider it again in September.
Yep.
So, when we did the site visit, when I did the site visit, I don't remember if anybody else did site visits with me there, I thought everything looked fine in July. I don't think that there's any change that I have been around there. I haven't noticed any other issues with any of the plantings. So I would recommend that we issue the balance of the $5,000. And actually, I forgot to put that one on the report thing, but I can add that in writing.
Any discussion, or are we all good?
So is that all? Is that the complete amount? That's the final payment? The
On
5,000?
that one area.
Right, but that's all of it?
We have a lot more money in escrow, but not
Right, but
for that one
particular
detention
payment, it's
basin. Yes.
5,000,
Yeah.
that would be done with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we release the $5,000 surety escrow to Century Mill Estate based on Carol's report. All in favor?
Who was that, Jen? You said? Vote?
Yes. It's unanimous.
Okay. So related to Century Mill, not on the agenda specifically for that topic, but when I was explaining, Liz came in this morning to kind of go over the agenda and sort of get an idea of some of the things that we were talking about. It dawned on me that their construction phase of work in the wetlands is only supposed to be done during July 1 to October 1. Now tomorrow's October 1. So, Jim and I have a standing site visit there,
Including
and
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Bring a police officer.
So I just wanted to go over it with you guys a little bit. Do you know this subdivision over on Century Mill, Spectacle Hill Road off of Century Mill Road? It was approved by the Conservation Commission in 2007, and they've been doing it in phases. And, so the commission approved, and I'll say sort of for their benefit, but for anybody else's, so the commission approved the plans in total, although they did do some revisions, and we recently, last year, I think, amended the order conditions to adopt any revisions they had made. And in the plans, as I said, there's phasing, and they have notes, which are part of what we approved. And so for notes, construction at wetland crossings, it says all work within the resource areas at each crossing shall be performed between July 1 and October 1.
So can you refresh us and say, like, what is the status of completion on the construction of that
Okay.
area?
So, if you remember last fall,
Yeah.
Andy approached the commission about working out of season.
Yes.
To do the work during frozen conditions, right?
Yep.
And by the time, we got to the point where we were comfortable with the information, it became spring and thaw,
Yeah,
so we
March.
said no. So then they waited till July. So in July, they started at Road C, which is, if you go up Spectacle Hill, take a right.
Yes, that one in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should have brought my iPad down because I have more photos on that. But if you go down there, there's essentially a 20-foot high culvert.
Yeah.
I don't know, 8, 10, 12 feet wide. I can't remember how wide it is. And that has been put in place. And, it's been dry. So everything's been in very dry conditions. There's been no flow. There's been no issues with sedimentation or anything like that. And then probably, I'd have to go back in the reports, say sometime in August, I don't remember exactly when, maybe the end of August, maybe even September, but not that long ago, they started putting in the retaining wall
Yeah.
for the road. So it's like block construction, and what they do is they put in some of the block on each side, and then they fill the road to get the road up, and then they start on the other side. So you've got, kind of equal measure of dirt pressure on the culvert coming in. If you were crossing the wetland, going towards where they're going to build the majority of houses up
Yeah.
there, that backside, the retaining wall's not as long as this side coming up to the wetland crossing. And let me actually see if I can find a good, this looks like, this is Road C. So if you look at this, and if you want to see something, come on up. So this is the length of, and it may not be complete, but the length of the retaining wall. So it's pretty long, a couple hundred feet. And they've done this wetland replication work for the alteration of this crossing here. They have not done this mitigation, this was the replication. They have not done the mitigation for the aura yet, because they're still filling this roadway and building up the wall. So since I was there last week, I would say there's probably still close to maybe 50 to 100 feet maybe, if I'm saying it right, which I may not be, how long it was, but I would say it's probably, good ways to go, maybe 3/4.
Yeah, but that's supposed to be building up.
It's building up, right, so but it's work in the resource area, so I'm just trying to explain what
Yeah,
work
yeah.
is still remaining.
Well, I guess, I don't even know how to phrase the question. Is there enough work done there so that the work that they need to continue to do isn't negatively impacting? You know what I mean?
Has it yet?
Well, I guess, let me not answer that yet. Let me just say what is being done still, and then we can think about whether that's an option.
Okay.
Whether, if they're not impacting that means anything, because the weather's changing, right? So we're going into the wet conditions.
Right,
so
I
far.
guess if it does get wet, my question is it gonna cause a lot of
Right.
runoff, or have they done enough? So
Right,
that
I would, so let's just say, so they have the aura mitigation work left to do, and they have the rest of the road to build up, and the rest of the wall, and And then on the back side, so, which would be this, so the same side on the back side, they've got these 2 pipes in, that's done. So this aura mitigation's not done. They're working on this detention basin, most of which is outside of the commission's jurisdiction, but there is a retaining wall that's been shown on the plan as part of the, to stop the breakout grading. And when we were there last week, we were talking with the town engineer, our consulting engineer, and he said he didn't think that they were planning to put the wall in, but they haven't talked to the commission about that. So that would be a change in there, what they propose to do.
What, but you don't know why they want to make that change? You just
I don't
said
think he
they're not
thinks
gonna
it's
do
needed. There was another location that had a retaining wall proposed along the swale. I don't know if I can find that one. And when we looked at it, it didn't seem like it was necessary. I'm not sure that I have an objection if they didn't remove that at this point. I guess I just need to know more about it, like
Yeah.
what the grades are gonna be. Because one of the problems that we encountered last week was an area of erosion controls not being maintained. And there was some sediment that had gone beyond the barrier. And again, in the case where it went beyond the barrier, it might not have been into the wetland. It might have been on this, just a gradient of it. With the rain today and tomorrow, if they haven't taken care of it, then there could be a problem. It was really filled to the top of the silt fence in one spot, so the whole thing wasn't a problem. But what I would really want to make sure is that without that, how are they going to stabilize it? Are the grades going to be any different than what they showed us? Are they going to be steeper? Does it need some other type of stabilization, like a mat or
It
something?
may have been a question in that location of their, when they put the fill there, they just went too far with it.
Yes, and that's quite possible too. They've been dumping the fill, backwards. They're building up this berm with a very clay, heavy material, and then they have been kind of scraping it back and removing any. There's some construction debris in it, so they're kind of doing that as they pull it back. But I guess, so in this point, I would just want to know what the grades are going to be, how they're going to be different, and whether or not they're so steep then that it would need some other way to stabilize it,
So do they know that we're looking for that information?
Well, not necessarily, because Andy didn't show up for the meeting last week.
Okay, is the guy that you talked to going to communicate that to Andy, or you don't know?
I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I think Erica sent an email actually after our site visit last time with some of those comments that
Okay.
stuff needed to be done, because I remember that, I know we communicated with his engineer because it wasn't in the SWIP report and so he hadn't seen that. And so which we're not sure whether he just did the roads and didn't do the detention areas, when he did the review.
Do we have any kind of timeline? I guess it would be something you might be able to find out tomorrow. How long it would take him to finish it? So I'm just trying to think with the October 1st stop, if it's more beneficial, if he's close enough to let him finish and get the replication in before the winter starts this year, rather than to have him cover that area.
So I think it's his burden to provide that information. I can
Right.
certainly bring it up to them tomorrow, where the commission's meeting next week. I think it would be important that they provide it.
Well, I think we need to figure out whether we think the impact on the wetland is greater or less if they were to continue.
Well, if they were
Because
to stop,
what would be the
then
impact?
I think we would do like what we had them do last spring, which is put up all the barriers. That would be check dam barriers essentially, and just in the snow fencing, and just, this is where you
Sit
stop.
like that. And then we let them do it in frozen conditions, or do they wait till the dry season?
I don't know that they need to go in frozen. I think that they would need to explain to you, because I can't really explain for them where they think they are and how fast they could do it, and whether or not doing it would have an impact or not. I think that's kind of their burden, and I'm not sure that I would want to state it fully. I think they're not going to be able to, I don't think that they're going to be able to do this planting, because they may not, if we stopped it tomorrow, I don't think they wouldn't finish the wall, and so then they wouldn't have the grade, so they wouldn't do this planting. Again, the replication's been planted, so that's a good first step, but then this wouldn't happen for until, and the growing season essentially is October 15th, so, sometimes you can plant later than that, but that's, kind of the deadline that most of the time we use. So there's this crossing.
Yep.
And then, so then, if you remember through the early part of the summer, Andy also got your approval for me to agree to his construction schedule for the Road A crossing. So he submitted that, and that has not gone very quickly at all.
Is that the one, like, if you go straight up in the back?
It's going out towards Century Mill, where I think somebody rode with him to go and
Yeah,
check it
yes,
out.
Yes, Jim and I rode.
Yeah,
Yes, okay.
so that's the one. So in that case, so let's see, 6:35.
It's okay if you ride up there in a truck.
Jim, as we found out, you can't take, I took the town car and it had 4 people in it, and the town engineer is like, oh, I drove this the other day and I was able to get through, and so I was like trying to push it along because, you know, we were being lazy for the most part, I guess, you know, because we usually, well, Andy's usually been there and he's driven us, and so I was like, all right, well, you know, I'll try it, and snapped a cable underneath and had to call for a tow. So, I mean,
Thanks for fun.
yeah, so anyway, and it was unfortunate, but it's good it wasn't too big a project for them to fix. Anyway, so this crossing, you know, is a little different. There's not a lot of vegetated wetland. It's an intermittent stream, and this is the endangered species habitat for the marbled salamander. So they've cleared it, and there's erosion control in place, and they trenched open where the water line is going to go through. And we were talking about that at our site visit last week, because it seems as though the trench has been open for like 3 weeks or more, you know, and nothing's happened with the water line. It was all ledge. They basically had to, you know, jackhammer it out for weeks. I think that was one delay. It was just slow. He didn't have the equipment to do anything any more quickly. But I don't know why they haven't put the water line in. I have no. He wasn't at the site visit, and the last time before that, I don't think we went down there because he had said no work had occurred, so we didn't visit it. So that one, I think, is a lot further away from
Sounds it, yeah.
being completed.
In addition to our October 1 deadline, does Heritage impose any?
I'm not 100% sure. I did look at the last letter they had sent that said that they could commence phase 3, and it referred to a couple of plans that they had submitted to them independent of the commission, which had, and we talked about later, but had the grading over the top of the crossing. Does that ring a bell with you? I thought that they had said that there couldn't be any work after a certain date in October, but I don't know that it was October 1st. And I didn't quickly today looking for it, didn't come up with it. It really only dawned on me today that it was the 30th and tomorrow's the 1st. And when I was telling them about this, because I really only had it on, as I said, for the escrow release, I hadn't quite processed where we were on timing for things.
Isn't the marbled salamander the one that breeds in the fall?
Yes.
So that having the work going on in the fall.
Right, so I think what Heritage had wanted, what I recall his engineer saying was that Heritage wanted them to be done as soon as possible over there. And so, you know, like even at the end of August would be the best.
Yeah.
Whether they had a date certain that he couldn't work there, I haven't put my finger on that. But I can certainly call Brent Powers, who was the one who's familiar with the property, and find out from him, you know, if that's the case. Which I try to do before we go out tomorrow if I can reach him, just because give us more,
Yeah.
you know, sort of behind that date. But anyways, I don't know whether to say they have to stop tomorrow because that's what the plan says, or say you need to stop. You need to stop, and then you need to come to the commission, or I'm not sure what the best. I mean, it's, you know, they would be working in violation essentially of their order.
I mean, I think maybe we could use more information about, you know, what is the status, how much longer is it going to take him? And I think we need that information before we say stop or continue. Or
Right, and we also need to understand what the impact is if we were to tell them to stop, what's the impact?
Does it make sense, seeing how we are meeting next week, if there's a way for us to extend him like 8 days? And then just let him know tomorrow?
Next week too?
Yes.
Oh, the 7th, yeah. So it would only be, you know, a week into October, just to extend it out and have Jim and Carol ask him tomorrow, you know, if he wouldn't mind sending a representative or stopping in himself next meeting just to get some of those answers. 'Cause
With Alan.
Yes.
Yes.
So
it
the
almost seems
questions
like
are, how
two
long is it gonna take? What's the status? What would the impact be if it's not if work is stopped?
And it seems like we could always decouple the two, Roy, because they're in different phases, right?
And stopped for how long? Are we talking about?
Till July 1?
See,
I mean, that's the thing, without
Yeah,
knowing
yeah.
right.
what is left and not knowing, I mean, obviously they can't, it's gonna, I mean, so if you said you can continue putting in the wall and getting the grading done, but you're not gonna be able to plant, they're not gonna be able to plant anyway until the spring, so, that's not work. Although it's, might involve equipment and disturbance. But then that area also isn't gonna be stabilized, so then you'd be saying, so if you graded it and it's not planted, how are we gonna stabilize it? Which when we talked about it in the winter, we said, you need to have erosion mats and other blankets or whatever to hold, to tack the ground in place, until it could be stabilized. So those would be some of the factors that, again, I don't know what he thinks. If he thinks he'd be able to get the wall in, within the next month, and then he'd still be able to do the erosion mats, or if he says it's gonna take me, another 2 months, and then it's gonna be frozen, I just don't know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're both in different phases of the project, right? Those
Yes.
two crossings.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily coupled. If we allowed
One.
One to go.
that's near the completion and still.
Well, and I think even regardless of Heritage and their position on the salamander work, I mean, the commission under our bylaw also regulates endangered species habitat. So I think it's something that we should consider as well, as what's that impact potentially going to be if we don't close that area off.
That's what Janet said. They agreed in
Yeah.
the fall that
Yeah.
it would seem like that's a good time to just stay out of there if they haven't gotten anywhere near completion. Then.
So I guess I wouldn't mind so much if we, gave him until October 7.
Mhm.
But if for some reason he's not available to come on October 7 to talk to us, I think I feel uncomfortable just letting him go.
Or a
Yeah.
representative if
Yeah.
he's coming to talk.
Right, whoever.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I would be a little uncomfortable with just,
I
well,
agree.
whenever I get there kind of thing. And then he's just allowed to, continue. He's
Right.
not gonna stop.
Exactly.
So
So-
they either need to stop on October 7th
Or
if they
come.
can't come, or present the information.
Exactly.
Now, the information really honestly should be presented by this next Thursday, so you have it to review, so it's not being given to you, that's how we've always
Yeah, okay.
required the
Sounds
information.
good.
Okay, so that's all I had on that one. And it's just a little after 7:30 if you want to go back to continuing. The DPW.
Oh, okay. So DPW Long Hill Road and Meadow Road, continue the public hearing on the NOI.
So that's the same thing Ducharme Dillis asked for the meeting after the 7th.
Okay. So, is this something to make a motion to do?
No, I think you can just say what time you're going to continue it to.
Okay, are we up to, we only have 7 o'clock then, right?
Right, and so we gave them, I think, a half an hour this time because we thought that they would probably have had a chance to have the comments into Broomfield, to our peer review consultant and have review. I guess at this point, where we don't have any other hearing, I would be more inclined to just give them 15 minutes in case they haven't gotten it to us in time to have the peer review consultant review back again.
Okay, all right, so 7.
Oh, well, actually, wait, we're talking the 21st.
Oh.
I don't know, I still don't know.
Well, wait a second.
I would still just put it 15 minutes. If we go over, we go over.
We're talking the 21st for both of those?
Yeah.
Broomfield and Costa?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so.
Not Costa, Broomfield and
And
DPW.
DPW.
Do you want to just, did we already put Broomfield at 7?
Yeah,
Okay, so.
so 7:15?
Sure.
There might not be that much to talk about for DPW for Broomfield, there might be more
Yeah.
than 15 minutes.
right, so you want to go back and say 7:30 then?
Yeah, I would
Is-
be more comfortable with
Is
that.
Codine Capital at 7?
Oh,
No, that's.
yeah, we already
next
did,
week.
you're right.
So,
All right, so then we gotta switch that
But
around.
no, Codine's next week at 7, not the
Yeah,
21st.
oh, not the 21st, okay,
Oh,
you're right,
The
right, right, right.
21st.
Yeah.
Well, on the 21st, the DPW could be faster, we could put them at 7.
That's what I was gonna say,
That's
and they don't wanna have to stay late too.
Okay, so
That should be a quick
put
one.
them at 7,
Yeah.
and the other one at 7:15, okay. Okay, that makes sense. So I had one other item that I wanted to bring up under wetlands that I didn't have on the agenda, but it came up kind of late last week. And I was telling Janet and Liz about it this morning. The town of Stowe received word of a potential activity on Maple Street in Stowe that turns into Teal Road in Bolton. And that somebody was doing work on the property. And so I'll show you the plan for this location and explain a little bit more because it makes better sense. And you guys might be familiar a little bit with this Balbecky. Do you remember ever hearing about the Balbecky property? So here's Teal Road and here's Maple Street. And then the line kind of cuts through, and I'm not sure how accurate the line is one way or another. So they had a call and they could definitely tell, you know, that there's all this wetland on the front of the property. And there's an intermittent stream that flows here. There's a pond, there's vegetated wetlands. There's riparian zone associated with the stream. There's a gate that kind of comes in this way, and they could, from the road, see that there had been some clearing that was occurring. And the Stowe Conservation Administrator had somebody who had come into the office sometime earlier, maybe in the spring, I'm not sure exactly when the date was, who was inquiring about the property, and she pulled out the plans and showed them, you know, the wetland resource areas and any activity would have to come before the commission kind of thing. And so, lo and behold, that person bought the property and is clearing it. So she sent an email to the person and copied me on that, and you know, said, you know, been copying the town of Bolton because I don't know where the line is exactly, and you know where the work's occurring. So the person didn't respond to the email, so she prepared a letter. I think I'm not sure if I got it positive or correct. I think she sent out a certified letter that never got picked up. So she went out with a police officer to hand deliver it because the person was continuing to work. And she wasn't comfortable going there alone.
Yeah.
So when she went there, she said that to get to where the person was, she definitely walked across the stream and out near the pond. Now again, she didn't know really where the line was, so I don't know if any work was occurring on this side or it was all over on this side.
Right.
So the person told her she needed to get off their property, you know, get off the property, you can't be on my property. So she notified me of, you know, proceedings, how that was going, and said, and so I said, you know, well, I really haven't been by there in a long time. I never went out on this wetland delineation, the commission did it. So this was a notice of resource area delineation that had been filed. We issued the order of resource delineation in 2005. So I don't know how accurate it is today, but there had actually been an earlier version of this, maybe 5 years before that. So it came in a couple of times, and I don't think it changed dramatically one way or another. But the town administrator said that this plan looked different than what she had for the pond. So it could change. You know, there could be beaver activities. You know, who knows what's changing things. So anyway, I went on Thursday on my way home. I said I'd meet her like at 2 because I could go, you know, home that way. And so we arranged to meet. We, you know, basically pulled off on the side of the road, and he came almost ramming up behind her in a pickup truck and said to us, "Get off of my property." And so I didn't expect her to respond like, you know, I thought she'd say, okay, you know, because she had told me she wasn't comfortable with the person. And she said, well, we're not on your property, we're on the, you know, town right of way, and, you know, we have business to do here. And anyway, so long and short, we both had Stowe and Bolton police officers come.
Very smart, yeah.
And, well, he said he was gonna call, so she said, all right, I'll call. And
Call
I said,
for you,
well,
yeah, no problem.
You know, I better call too.
Yes.
I don't know jurisdiction, you know, don't want someone getting, you know, flustered, and I don't know, I mean, the guy was pretty upset. So, the long and the short was that the police said they can be there, they have business to do here, and if you feel that if you can find out where your property line is, you can post it, you know, and say no parking, no dumping, because I guess there had been some dumping there in the past. So what I don't know is really how far it's gone back, but when we were there, a car drove down and they said, hey, do you know what's going on over there? And we said, you know, well, we're kind of trying to figure that out. And they live in Stowe. If you continue down Maple Street and you can either go out to 117 or you can go down a dead end, which is Old Bolton Road, and it basically ends at our conservation land. And because this is all Annie Moore Conservation Land. So here's an aerial. Let's see if I can get it. So this is
That's
TL into Maple. And it doesn't actually show Old Bolton on this one, but it's a little further down.
So where are they about?
And so the work is being done somewhere. Here's the pond,
Mhm.
you know. So the work is being done somewhere in here.
Is that clear?
Anyway, the person who lives over here, said, I was wondering because I could see how thinned out it is.
Wow.
So their land only comes to here. So that was a curious comment, you know, that they could see how thinned out it was. And so I don't know how far back it's gone, in which case, you know, it would certainly be into Bolton, which all of this lot's, you know, quite wet.
The Bolton side, is it unowned right now? Who is it owned by, or is it?
Well, it's owned by this guy,
This
DePietro,
whole
who
lot.
purchased
I
all
got
of
you, yeah, it's
this.
part, I got you.
All of
All of
these
these?
lots. Yeah.
Bolton side and
Okay.
stuff.
I believe that's the
Oh,
case.
okay.
You know what, I did not look it up on here, but if he purchased this, and, you know, then he purchased the whole lot, which is
So we
both
just
Bolton
want to
and
know, it's
Stowe.
just this parcel that he's,
I really don't know. I couldn't see anything really from here.
okay.
This is pretty flat in through here.
So the question is where he's doing the work
Exactly.
relative to the line.
Right. So, and then Annie Moore, this is all Annie Moore land here, around the back of these parcels.
Yep.
And then this is the Lord's apple orchard that comes up to the back here.
How did towns
it's not too
determine where
But it doesn't have
they-
the other new house. Yeah, which is different.
when towns are questioning where their jurisdiction is, how do they determine?
I don't know, because, you know, I mean, every time I've talked to DPW, they never really know exactly where the town line is. Now, I don't know if Bolton does it, I think Stowe selectmen go out and they do their monuments, you know, fairly annually, like their perambulation, you know, when they go out and they look at all the town bounds. But that doesn't mean they're going through the wetlands to do that kind of thing, they're looking where the big bounds are, you know. So I don't know, you know, and somebody would probably have to stake it, and I don't know if it ever was staked. I don't really know the history of anyone trying to do any work here. I haven't had a chance to look at that part, you know, whether somebody ever filed with the planning board. I mean, obviously they created lots, you know, at some point. Again, I don't know how long ago.
But does that have anything to do with where the town boundaries are?
What?
No, but if somebody had delineated it in the field, you know, that like the Conservation Commission in 2005 may have said, you know, put the town boundary out, we'd just like to see it. I don't remember whether they did that or not.
When they delineated the lots, did they have any information on the lots as far as orders go, or where wetlands would?
Well, this was what we approved.
Okay.
And we did not find accurate the Water Resource Protection District, which is no longer a bylaw in the town, but at the time in 2005 it was. And that may have been because they didn't have the offsets properly from floodplain or something like that. I don't exactly know. I don't remember. I didn't read through the entire file yet to see. I just
Right.
pulled this out on Thursday to meet with her. And so, but I did talk with her this morning, and her next step was to bring it to the Stowe Conservation Commission when they meet next week, and ask them whether they want to issue an enforcement order now, because they've tried other avenues. And so she had actually in her letter given them a deadline of tomorrow to come into the office to address, you know, the work that was going on. So if he didn't come in by tomorrow, then she figured that that she'd wait till the commission's next meeting next week and see whether they wanted to issue an enforcement order. So what I said was, I thought that we would sort of piggyback possibly, with our own letter, just saying, we're aware of this issue and and I'd wait till after tomorrow to see if he came in and it was cleared up, but if it didn't, that we're aware of this issue, we don't know where the town boundary is, we are aware of the wetlands, we have a file on it, and, we would expect that any work that's within the commission's jurisdiction would be, he would be fine with us, and then we can follow it up after that, but something along those lines.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's clearly in a wetland.
Yeah.
So he needs, it's in one or the other or both commission's jurisdiction.
Right.
And he can pick which one or both he wants to issue a notice of intent to.
She's probably-
But he may have to do it to both,
He's got to do it to at least one of them.
Right,
Yes.
right.
He doesn't have access back through here anywhere.
No.
So he has to
To
come
go
through
through
here
here,
if
yeah.
he's gonna be working in through here.
Well,
Yeah,
that doesn't really matter.
Oh, it's where he's
Whether he has
clearing,
access.
right?
It's where he's doing the work.
Where
Right.
it's clear.
And then the
but for future work,
bylaws,
for, what his proposed work is.
and Stowe's bylaws are the same as.
I'm not as clear on their bylaws, I should read theirs a little bit more carefully. I don't know if they have any different jurisdictions, they do have a bylaw.
Because if he's gonna get 2 letters and then 2 notices of intent, and then he's gonna be getting double and double, it may be hard to coordinate for him what his response is gonna be,
Yeah.
and so how often are there double town type of?
We haven't had one in a long time, I don't think. I mean, I've seen them in other places. When I worked in another town, I recall, somebody was doing an upgrade for a septic system, and they had to come through their land in one town and put it in the other town, So, I mean, it happens. And in fact, Kathy was saying she has one on the Acton line, now where it's, it also in that case was a septic and, what to file. And I think it really depends on what they're proposing to do, and we just don't have the information, so it's really trying to get the information at this point, and that there's an apparent violation based on the plans that we have, but we don't know if it's in our town, and we don't know if,
So is the burden on the town or the property owner to say where the work is being done? And he could come back and say, I'm not even touching Bolton property. Does he have to prove that, or do we?
I don't know at this point. It's if he's doing work in the town of Bolton at all, if he's doing work within Stowe and he's within 100 feet of our wetland areas, then it's still jurisdictional. So if he was doing work on this side of the pond, maybe this side of the pond, or on right here, and it's 100 feet away from the town line, it's still within our jurisdiction. We still would be notified at the very least as a butters.
Even if that's in
You know.
Stowe.
So basically.
Yeah, it's like,
So
if
100
the-
feet from a wetland that's in our side, is that what you're saying?
If
Oh,
we
wow.
would, I'm just saying, we would be notified if he was doing work
Yeah.
as a butters, because the work would be within 100 feet. If he was doing work, 101 feet and 1 foot came in, then he'd be within our jurisdiction. We don't really have that information. I would say it's his burden at this point. We have a filing that was made with the commission with intent purposes to show all of the parcels in both towns, and, that.
So, piggybacking the letter with Stowe is good, but, it doesn't sound hopeful that we're even gonna get information out of him. So
Well,
we may
that's
have to
true.
start thinking about.
Yeah, what-
Right,
What's the
right.
next
So
step
for by
after this? I
next
don't think that's
meeting,
gonna do
they will hopefully be talking more, and I'll know whether he's approached them or not, I mean, certainly he was aware who I was, to the degree that he knew I was from the town of Bolton. He took photographs of my car, so,
Really smile.
that was after I broke the transmission
Oh.
line that day.
Do we need Chief Bothwell and Chief Alfano to show up together?
Well, let's wait till we see how it goes, whether he's coming in.
Are we going to talk about Vickery or no?
Yes. So another thing I didn't have on the agenda, because actually I'm expecting that they'll come in at some future date, but I had received a complaint that somebody on Wattaquatta Hill Road was building a barn, and that it might have been too close to the property line, and it might have been too close to the wetlands. And so I called the person and, told her that I had this this complaint had come through somebody else to me, and I was following it up, and she said, I could come out and take a look at things. So I went out, and she was building a lean-to shelter. It had 3 stalls. It was not like on a concrete pad or anything like that. It was, let's see if I can look at this here. So this is Fifeshire Pond, right? So this is Water Aquatic, the bottom of Water Aquatic. And this is an existing horse paddock. I think this was her house, but this is her house maybe, and this was a barn. And you come up like a driveway that kind of comes, I think it comes around like this and then comes up like that, so it's kind of an S. Let me see if I did a print on it. I'm not sure if this is completely accurate or not, but this is, I think, an intermittent stream around this area. And when I told her, that, that I was looking for wetland jurisdiction, she said, well, it's only wet up in here. And then to get there, though, we had to go through some paddock areas, which is, this may be old, again, another sort of older aerial, so there was this area that had a lot of, mostly, jewelweed, spotted impatient, and I didn't have the auger with me or anything, so I didn't look at any soils or anything. And then there were some pipes that went underneath a gate. And then sort of within this area, either this has become a new paddock, anyway, it was fairly defined little depression of a swale, but there was no flow or anything. It was so dry. This was, a couple weeks ago. And then...
I'm sorry, where was she putting the new?
So the new barn is somewhere right over here. And then, so as I said, the driveway kind of comes around here, and she said that there were a couple pipes, you couldn't see them, that went under the driveway. And it dropped off fairly steep right through here. So I was assuming that it's probably dropping into more of a wet area here, and then looking across, knowing that, Fifeshire is all sort of through here, maybe it was continuing. But I didn't go down in there, so I don't know definitively. So in terms of resource area, under the Wetlands Protection Act, the state act doesn't look at an intermittent stream up gradient of a wetland. It only looks at an intermittent stream if it's down gradient. So the question is, is this a wetland, and is this an intermittent stream coming out of it? Under our bylaw, we do look at intermittent streams that are up gradient, not just down gradient. So she got really, so she was building a barn because she is proposing to, she has animals that she's rescuing. And so she had a number of horses, she had some goats, she had some dogs, I think she had chickens, I can't remember. And I don't know if they were all I don't know what percentage of them was rescue or not. But I said I just don't know for sure if you meet the agricultural definition to be exempt for the barn, because normally land in agricultural use, so land already in agricultural use, which would exempt you, is presently and primarily used in producing or raising one of the following agricultural commodities for commercial purposes. So, if you're raising animals for commercial purposes, then you're exempt, but whether you're rescuing and housing animals wasn't really clear to me. So I sent her all this information, highlighted it, what I was reading, and then, and also land in agriculture use means land within a resource area or the buffer zone presently and primarily used in a manner related to and customarily and necessarily used in producing or raising such commodities. So again, the land, in that case, the land may not have been part of that. It was sort of wooded and so forth.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Century Mill Stables, Lucky Horse, where they have a rescue operation and it's right up against the stream.
Well, they also have other operations there, I believe, too. I don't know that it's just rescue. Is that all just rescue? I thought that they also have a business.
Yes,
that
they have people come and pay to ride in.
Yeah, I don't know offhand if that agriculture use has changed, if the commodity, they're no longer raising anything. Anyway, I wasn't sure, so I called DEP And we do now have a new circuit rider in the central region who is somebody who can come and talk to the commission about any questions you have. It'd be best to, she said, the sooner you decide to have me, the better, because I'm sure I'll start getting busy. But she's welcome to come if we have questions we want to ask in advance or multiple topics. Anyway, she's a resource right now for us. I mean, right now and forever, essentially, but maybe more
That
available
was
right now.
unfilled for a while, right?
It's been unfilled for a long time. When I've had questions that I really wasn't sure I was going the right direction, I've usually called the Northeast region. Now that person is now vacating, she just said she's vacating her position to take a position as an analyst with DEP, effective, I forget when, November maybe. But
Aside from whether it's considered agricultural land or not, isn't there like if the structure is movable and below certain dimensions, that it can be built without?
a building permit, possibly, not wetlands.
Oh, no, wetlands.
So, right, so even if someone is putting in a shed that doesn't need a building permit, doesn't mean they don't need a wetland permit necessarily. I mean, it depends on where they're putting it, I mean, if they're under the Wetlands Protection Act, there are some exemptions if it's more than 50 feet away, and it's not something that's gonna have, it's not a permanent structure necessarily, then there's some exceptions as well.
In wetland, okay.
So,
We
in
don't-
this case, this is fairly close to the intermittent stream. Anyway, so she got uncomfortable when I sent her the material about whether it's an agricultural exemption or not. She didn't know how to sort of argue the point. And I, as I said, I called DEP. They said, and with all agricultural things, it's difficult, so it's different how you ask about the project. And so she said some things you can ask are, is it basically a business? It's not just somebody keeping these animals, so are you getting donations of food or blankets or money, are you getting something, that you can show that this is a business, this isn't just, you feeling good and taking in these animals. Because just because you have horses or just because you have goats, your pets don't constitute an agricultural exemption. And same with your garden.
Basically, is it an enterprise or not?
Essentially, are you raising a commodity, or is it the intention to have some sort of a business, whether it's profitable or not, is your intention to be running, something commercial. So anyway, so she went to her attorney, and he called me last Thursday and said that he would like to get a wetland consultant to go out and take a look at it, so that they could either they could help present the information. Yes, it is a wetland. No, it isn't a wetland. This is why we think it is, why we think it isn't. Whether they could present the information on an agricultural exemption, or they need to file. So I said that sounded good. So they weren't prepared to be able to come tonight. I think they were going to try to be able to come for next meeting. So, but he hadn't spoken to the wetland consultant yet, so I just need to. I wanted to let you guys know about it, and that I'll follow up to find out if he was going to be able to get out there in that 2-week time period to get the information.
And even still, I think we probably want to go take a look.
Well, so, that's something that we'll discuss with them. Hopefully he can present the information in such a way that you'll have something to go out and look at. I mean, if she hasn't filed and he says it's not a wetland, then we get into a different issue. We'll have to think of that. But again, without them submitting the information, I don't know for sure. I didn't fully examine it. I just took the information she gave me. And this is where it's wet, this is where it flows, this is where it's piped, this is where I could see the depression, So I didn't fully evaluate it all. Okay, that's all I have under wetlands.
Okay. And move on to land management?
Yeah. So for Fifeshire, I don't have too much new because I haven't been out there in the last week, but I did spend time with communicating with the property owner directly adjacent to the dam in Berlin. And so a couple of things we talked about was just the next phases were for the contractor to stabilize the lawn, the slope that they came over, and get his equipment off the site first, and then stabilize that area, screen the area with some vegetation, repave the driveway on their individual property and then seal coat the common driveway. And so I wanted to just make sure that the homeowners didn't have any major activities coming up that, you know, if they decided to pave, you know, that there would be some notice. So I've asked the contractor to give us 48 hours notice, and they have given me some dates, which I've communicated, that they have like a regular, a meeting at their house, you know, so that would be inconvenient, you know, to have them paving. So I need to follow it up with the contractor now to see where he is, because the last time I was out there, he was saying, oh, probably like another week before they got the equipment off. So last time I was there, they hadn't removed the equipment yet. And then they were going to screen with a couple of red maple trees and white pine trees, which is pretty much kind of what they had in their backyard. And they were just going to put it in that cart road to grow up and just sort of shield their view of where that access road had gone. And I haven't yet contacted all the other owners about the seal coating because I was waiting until he got, you know, back to me on that other stuff. So, and we had, I don't know if when I met with you last, we did have, did I tell you that we had a milestone meeting with the state, with the Office of Dam Safety, we'd had a site visit that essentially was 100%, you know, work, you know, that they needed to know about, and then our consultants were going to be submitting some forms to them to get the sign off that it was non-jurisdictional. So I don't know whether they've submitted that material since we had that. I know they were waiting for me to get back on the minutes from that meeting still, just to confirm that, you know, what was agreed to. I think he sent those to me late last week as well. And so we're close to being able to wrap it all up. So that, you know, basically everything's done, but a little bit of planting and you know, punch list items.
Great.
So that was very good.
First.
Just make a note here. So,
Black Swallow Ward.
oh yeah, so I just, on Bower Springs, our land management consultant, and just for your knowledge, we've hired someone to help us with some of the land management up there because we haven't had sort of regular volunteer people available to help with all the mowing and all the invasives and maintenance there. So we have done work parties there to try to remove bittersweet, and mostly it's been bittersweet that we've had the work parties do, and then sometimes the scouts have helped, you know.
I actually saw somebody mowing when we were there on Sunday.
Oh, okay, then he got back out for the weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, so he had been out and hadn't finished all the mowing, was intending to try to get back out again, so I guess he did it on Sunday. And so I don't know now. I had been there on Thursday. So he had not had time to, he was looking at the black swallow wort, which is down by the ponds, the back side of the far side of the ponds going towards Harvard. And it was all kind of intertwined with poison ivy, and he wasn't going to be able to take it out by hand. And so he used his equipment that he had that day to kind of rake it off, and he bundled it. And he and I had a conversation about what to do with it. And I had said, you know, I thought we could bring it back to the town hall and put it on like black plastic on the trailer that we have out behind the storage shed because, you know, kill it. And then once it was completely decomposed, you know, we could get rid of it at the transfer station. So when I got there Thursday, it was still in a bundle, and then I noticed there was another patch of it as well, and some of it did have seed pods on it. So I didn't actually look yesterday or today because he didn't call me or say that I've removed it. So I don't know if he hasn't done that. I'll have to find out if he's going back out or whether we're going to have to somehow get that off of there. But I do need to talk to him about that. He did do some herbicide treatment on the Tree of Heaven, the Ailanthus, which he's done in the past. And again, we had approved some outside the buffer zone herbiciding, nothing in the buffer zone. And so I guess I don't know the rest of the mowing, but so I'll have to catch up with him on that.
Is he doing all the mowing now, or you had somebody, well, there have been like unidentified volunteers who've been doing it, right? I mean,
Well, not the mowing so much. Last year, there was a guy who was doing the senior tax rebate program, and he was doing some mowing for me. And I was trying to get him to do, because he was using our brush hog, our small brush hog, and he had a trailer hitch, so he was able to put it on the trailer and take it up there. His wife retired, and he's kind of enjoying their freedom. So he was retired first, and so he was willing to sort of work, I think. And anyway, he did stop in the other day, but he didn't say he was coming back to do anything, so I don't know that he's interested anymore. So I haven't really had anybody regularly. And the intention with this guy was to get us to a point where we could just have anybody come in and do the mowing again. It just had gotten this really sort of hit or miss. Sometimes Harvard would do it, and sometimes they wouldn't do it, and sometimes I would hire someone, but someone who wasn't really as knowledgeable about the invasive stuff, and so they would just mow it as a field and not really be looking to try to get rid of bittersweet and that kind of stuff. So we really, then that's why we took that whole new approach of really doing capital work on it, and trying to get rid of the bittersweet and trying to open up the field edges so that we could mow it just more routinely and regularly. So I think he thought we'd be there in a couple of years, but I have to talk to him about his position on it now. I would like to think about and see whether you guys would want to try to persuade the advisory committee that we should have someone work for us during the summer, during the growing season, that could do not necessarily just Bower Springs, but certainly could spend quite a bit of time at Bower Springs, trying to improve it. Like when you go out of the parking lot, and if you take a right along the neighbor's house, it's kind of it's not a trail that everybody uses as much, but there's a section of the field that it was all bittersweet, and we've mowed it a number of times, but I think unless it's mowed even more frequently, we're not really going to suppress it and get the grasses and everything else growing. In the 2 or 3 years we've been doing it, I don't think it's made a huge improvement on it. And it's just in the ground. I mean, it's everywhere, so as soon as you stop mowing it, it's going to be climbing the trees again.
yeah.
So, I don't really know how DPW does it, but DPW has EMT students in the summer that they hire, and they do, a lot of roadside work and painting and, other projects. And I don't know that it has to be an EMT kind of person, but, other municipalities hire students, in the summertime or more or less kids, that can do this kind of work. So, again, I don't know whether they'll think we have any money, more than we've had in other years, but we're spending quite a bit with the consultant to do it. It costs him a lot because he has the equipment. He's quite knowledgeable about it, but I just think it might need more, more work.
Yes.
So so that will be coming, budget time always comes faster than we expect. So I just throw it out now so we can think about it. And I guess that's probably all I really have on Bowers, not knowing the rest of the work and having talked to him, but maybe next week I can add more to that.
Trail committee update?
So, we decided to have a trail committee formed, and I started meeting with a number of people in July, which is kind of a hard time to get a new group of people together. But we've had some fairly regular attendees, and I think there's certainly a bigger interest that's out there, but at the moment, the way the group has decided to operate is we've been meeting Monday mornings once a month, essentially at 8 a.m. For about an hour. And, we've kind of gone off and done other things in between. What the group decided to do was to focus on Vaughan Hill Conservation Area, because everybody who had come to the first meeting essentially knew that property and didn't know other ones necessarily as well, So we figured that we would use it kind of as a guide, because a lot of the issues that are going to come up there are going to come up at other properties as well. And so the first thing we started doing was got everyone familiar with the Map My Hike application, which is you can use on your smartphone or your iPad or whatever. And Janet actually used her GPS, and she had some software.
No, I just had
And that was
a
before,
cell phone
yeah.
app.
Yeah.
I just used a different one, which I guess they couldn't use, but anyway.
No, he was able to use yours.
Oh, he
But we were trying to get everybody on the same page because our IT person is very willing to try to help us with some mapping, but that's not his main job, So we had a meeting between actually Erica and the mobility committee and myself, and I forget if I had a couple of the people who had been doing some trail stuff with me. We'd met and we decided that we were all going to use Map My Hike, and that Erica and I would sort of be the people who would look at like if it was mobility and they were mapping sidewalks or gravel paths or rail trail or whatever they were doing for mobility, she would kind of look at their maps and make sure that it had enough information before we sent it to the IT person, so he would know what he was looking at, who it was for and what he was going to do with it, how he was going to use the information. So anyway, so I got the group going and we started doing the mapping. I'm not 100% sure yet whether we had all of the trails there mapped, but people have gone back out numerous times, and I'm actually going to be sending it. Actually, I have told the IT person that I've got the last couple of maps done, and whenever I have my next meeting in October, he's agreed he will put together all those trails, and he put it on the big printer, that plotter that we have, and so we are able to have something to work off of, in the group. Some of the things that we've discovered are, there's multiple entrances, and so you may come in from a certain point and you may go on a walk and then you may not know how to get back to that same point, right? And I mean, anymore is almost a little more linear,
Yeah, it's easier.
So it's a little easier.
Yeah.
And that's, so Rattlesnake, that's obviously another property that's very big like that and has multiple trails. So we've kind of come to an agreement that we need to name some of the trails so that we can sign them and say, you're here, here's, the Ridge Trail, here's the South Peak Trail, here's the trail to Woodside, so we've talked about that. And then, the yellow triangles have been the ubiquitous marker all through Bolton. So we've decided that to color code internally some cross trails. And we haven't yet decided which cross trails, because we didn't know at the last meeting whether we really had all of them on the map yet. But we thought we'd keep the triangle, and then we'd just either get a dot or paint a dot, or either then you'd have a red dot on the yellow triangle, or you'd have a blue dot on the yellow triangle, and those would be your internal trails.
Right.
And in addition to the naming of them and the You Are Here maps, and then maybe some other things at the parking lot entrances, hopefully we'd be helping. So we have 2 parking lots for that property, and then we have multiple other entrances, some over private land on conservation restrictions, and then one off of Woodside Drive as well. So, and then in the meantime, also the group, we've identified some areas that needed some attention. So in the beginning of the growing season, there were areas that needed to be cleared, the vegetation back a little bit, so some people went and did that kind of work. There's a boardwalk that has had problems over the year. It's really like kind of down in the boggy, area, and so it's been repaired over time, and even not that long ago.
It keeps breaking.
It keeps breaking, so they're still evaluating that. They fixed the boards. They're still trying to figure out whether to make it a higher boardwalk, or there's some discussion of putting some water bars further up on the hill to deter the water from, going right where that boardwalk is, so that it'll flow down still into the pond, but just away from where the boardwalk itself is. And then there's a section of the trail that goes out to Vaughan Hill, down below Woodside Drive to where the other parking lot is, that is really goes along the stream. It's really lovely to walk, but some of it's quite wet and doesn't have a boardwalk.
The Moen.
On the parcel that we purchased called Moen.
Multiple segments of that, I thought. Certainly, certain seasons are really, really wet. You
Yeah.
can see with it.
So we're
Trail gets really wide.
thinking of trying to move that up slope a little bit in some cases, or putting in the boardwalks. So I think at the last meeting, Jan, if you were not, I think we decided that we're probably gonna do a site visit with everyone over
Okay.
there. And
Just do a little walk and then.
and do a little walk in that area, and then decide, either flag it up, or where we're gonna do the boardwalk, and then we can do the filing if we need to, or whatever.
Okay. Well, I'd love to go to that. I've go to all the meetings, but I'd like to go to that because I know that particular area really well.
Yeah.
And even though certain sections might not look bad now,
Mhm.
in the spring, they're almost impassable.
And Carol, that's at 8 o'clock on Monday morning?
Well, so I haven't had a regular date yet, partly because it was summer, and so I had done like a poll to see when people were gonna be available, and then tried to just choose a date when more people would be able to
You
attend the
might be
meeting.
interested in that.
Yeah, okay, so I have to look at October, like the holiday in the middle of the month, or Columbus Day weekend, I think, so it wouldn't be that one, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for next Monday, so it might be the following one. Anyway, so that's how it's kind of been happening, but I'd like to probably establish a more regular date so that, they can get it on their calendar. And the last email I sent out, I was just double checking again, trying to get from the whole group, were the Monday mornings still the best time for people? And for those who responded, that was fine, that was the best times. And then some people haven't responded. There's one guy who helped out, again, he can't come to the meetings necessarily, but he's came to one to just express, call me if you need me to carry lumber in, or to, like, he mountain bikes too, so, he mapped a section, he can do that on his bike pretty easily. So anyway, so it's a great group. I'm hoping, there's at least one other person who's been working with me through the senior tax rebate program already. He was working with me last winter, and he and I communicate really regularly on other trails as well. And I said, he came in today after I'd met with Jan and Liz, and I said, if you want to just send an email and see if you can get people to coordinate together, so I'm trying to give people some ability to do it on their own, so that I don't end up having to be the only person who, coordinates all the effort, because there was a trail committee before that really didn't have any administrative assistant, so, and they formed pretty well, and they worked for a long time together, and I'm hoping that the group can kind of get up and running at some point a little bit more.
So how big would you say the group currently is?
1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 regular, and I'm including you really in that. And then there are 2 others who have come to the meetings. One other who has done work for us in the past, who kept saying he was planning to come to the meetings, but he hasn't mentioned one yet. So there could be, and if Steve ends up finding that it's something he wants to do, there could be a decent group, but it's been fine with the 5. It's just, there's always more work. And I think as we're, after we get something a little bit more definitive for Von Hill, and then we start to look at other sites, having other people, you can give them the material. You can say, this is what we do, this is how we're looking to map it, this is how we're looking to sign it, this is how we're looking, so you can get other people to do stuff. So I think this is a little bit of a learning curve portion of it, but it's been good. I mean, everyone's really been great to come. And then the last meeting, and I include, you didn't get to meet her, but Karen Hoffler, who, her husband was part of the first group. I kind of recruited her. She lives actually over on the Phillips Conservation Area. They own the land with the conservation restriction on it, and she rides her horses, and she knows the Rattlesnake Hill and Phillips area pretty well. So I just wanted to get a perspective from a horse owner too,
And
for some of the stuff.
someone who doesn't get lost there.
Yeah, I don't know how much she goes out in all of Rattlesnake, but it is more of an area that she would know.
Good.
So,
And you have a way to distinguish meeting versus working, and some of the work, somebody has to teach you if you don't have the app or you have the skill, or, because it would be nice to have something where you could say, okay, Saturday mornings, for those who can't make Monday, Saturdays at 7,
Yeah.
maybe before it gets really busy, here's the work, we need a crew, can you come
Yeah.
out?
So that's what I mentioned to this one guy today, Gordon, if you can call the crew together, because he wanted to go down and at the bog boardwalk is what we're kind of calling it. He wanted to kind of think about it a little bit more about what needed to be done, and he was going to go with one other person. I said, well, Nick would probably be another guy, that you might get some input from, or you know, if you need it to do the repairs, if you just, once you've decided. So yeah, I think it would be good to have another date. That's a great suggestion, to have an actual work date. Now, some of the people are retired, so I also like that they can kind of coordinate amongst themselves and just say, okay, you know, I'm free on Monday. You know, like several times after we've had the meeting, people have gone immediately to do things.
Yeah.
You know, if it wasn't immediately, it's within a couple of days. You know, so I think it would be nice, you're right, to get other people who want to help and who don't know the things. That would be a great long-term thing for us to get established. You know, like Bower Springs, if we could have a regular work party there on, whether it's quarterly or whatever, to do the bittersweet work, you
I
know?
wonder if another ad in the paper about the trail committee, because it seems to me that there are more than 5 people who would, in Bolton, who would be interested. I don't know.
We have 2 separate times, because not everybody can make the Mondays.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about just to get more people in general involved, you know? 'cause I don't know how many, I don't know if people realize we have a trail committee, you know?
So Janet, is the application on your phone, is that something anybody can
Yeah.
use GPS and upload to some cloud servers?
It is, but can I just, so we set it up so that we have a town login, so that everything comes into that one log, you know, so we can just go to one spot, so you don't have to like send us the, I forget what the file type was, but like a DCX or something, whatever it was.
GPX. yeah.
GPX, or,
Yeah.
you know, so you don't have to send us that file format. You use that app and you log in as Town of
And then
Bolton or whatever we have it as.
Registers.
Yes, and then it all comes right on to,
'Cause
you
I
know,
wonder-
then you email me to say I did this portion of this trail, and
Yeah.
then I go in and I can check it out, and then I can tell, you know, our IT person, I
Yeah.
want you to map this for us, you know, or put it, you know, print it out or
Yeah,
whatever.
and you're thinking the trail committee would handle that, or you
Yes.
would want to open it up for everyone in the town?
Well, we want to get a handle on it first,
Yeah, that's fair.
you know, so I think we kind of want to have some control initially, because we, as I said, we really just started in July getting the mapping.
Yeah,
And, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, it might be that anybody could do it. But I mean, once we get the trails mapped, I don't know that we need it open to everybody in the world either.
right.
But when so what we haven't really quite figured out is you can, on Map My Hike, you can take photographs, and you can do waypoints and stuff, but we haven't, our IT person hasn't completely been able to figure out how to transfer that information to us yet. So like when he plotted the map, he wasn't able to plot out the photographs where they were, you know,
Right.
so.
I use software that does do that. I mean, it does exist. right?
Oh, yeah, but the town doesn't have it,
Okay.
you know, so right now we're working with.
$100. I think that's-
Well, maybe you can give me the information and we can decide. Right now, our IT person did look at a variety of different ways, and this was what he came up with, is what he thought the town could handle and what he could handle, and how we could sort of manage it. I don't know that it's opposed to something else, but this is kind of how we started.
That's pretty neat. I was just thinking I could probably do that on my hikes through Rattlesnake, but
Yeah. Well, I can give you the login information, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
You don't have to be on the trail committee, you could be, you know, part of this group too,
Yeah.
that's sharing the information, but yeah, we didn't want to just put it in the paper and say, you know, go
Yeah.
hiking and use Map My Hike and
yeah,
log into Tom Bolton.
right.
I mean, already, I mean, you know, and it happens even to me, but, you know, we forget to turn it on and off, you know, so I got one map, and of course, it's going from Wattaquatic to Bower Springs
To
to,
here.
you know, wherever, right? So, and, you know, in Gary, so he doesn't know the trails, you know, so our IT person, he doesn't know the trails, so
Yeah.
I have to say, okay, can you edit this part out? I think it was just on in the car, or on their bike, or, you know, so, we, you
Yeah, you
know.
want to minimize it.
If you think of it, could you email the login and password?
Sure,
I'd ask for it now, but I'll forget it.
I don't remember
I'll forget
offhand,
when I
it's
write it
pretty
down,
simple,
yeah.
but if I say it publicly, then everyone knows it. So I think that's about it on that for now.
Okay. Okay, so now we're on administrative bills, mail, correspondence, announcements.
Okay, so I do have some bills. Oh, I should have under Bower Springs actually told you that we did have, and it's on the, as a bill, so I'll just tell you now, but we did have Bill Vadas go out and put in a new swale along the driveway road down towards the pond where we were having the big, originally the wash, kind of washing out and then just being completely wet. So it'll be interesting after we get some rain this week, you know, I don't know how heavy it's gonna be, but to maybe take another look and see whether it worked well. So his bill for that was for $600, and that doesn't include the stone. So we're still be getting a bill for the stone that was put in, that was for equipment and time. He basically spent the whole day there, you know, doing that work. And then he actually had a little bit of stone left. We originally were gonna get 3 loads, and we were able to only use 2. And he still had a little bit left over and put it on the bank, which we had talked about, and it was part of our filing to kind of stabilize where the kayaks go down and people fish a little bit and kind of shore that up a little. So I also have on the bills money for the engineering consultants, Leonard Engineering, for the 5-Star Dam. And I've looked over their details, and it's all fine with me. And then I also included surety for 248 Harvard Road that we talked about earlier, the release of their surety. So because I forgot to put the Century Mill on that, I probably will just do it on a separate one and just sign it and put it in. But if you guys want to sign this one, I'll just put sign here. Take a look at that. I didn't bring any other correspondence down. I think I went through most of it the last time we met, all the other planning board hearings that were coming up and stuff like that. So I don't think I have anything new, except that, oh, actually there was a new one. I don't know, I can't remember if there was a date. I don't think that they've actually filed, but I'll just update you. If you remember, we met with Mark O'Hagan about the Sugar Road property across from Colonial Candies. And we agreed after we did the wetland delineation review that we would be able to amend the order rather than require a new notice of intent. So he is going before the Zoning Board of Appeals to essentially, he went to them once, I guess, you know, with it kind of preliminarily. And he's now going to be officially asking them to determine that the work he's proposing to do is not significant enough to warrant a new filing or hearing. I'm not sure which they would have to require. And then, so it sounds like it's moving along, that he's finally getting to the stage that we might see, you know, an application to amend the order coming back in. And I don't know when, but it sounds like he's moving in that direction. Okay. Yeah, I didn't ask Rick minutes. I didn't get anything done. I was saying to Liz, I had a lot of days off last month. It seemed like the vacation, so.
Do we need to formally appoint Karen?
I think that would be great, yeah.
Any discussion on that, or should we just?
Maybe, I think we should ask for a motion and then discussion, or you can make a motion.
Well, Karen Overfield is the one who has been coming to most of the meetings, some of the site visits, you all know. She would like to be appointed as an associate member. Any discussion on that, or are we all just thrilled?
I think that's fantastic.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Karen Overfield as an associate member of the Conservation Commission.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Great.
Oh, the only other thing I can think of under administrative is that you may have seen today, and Liz probably wouldn't have seen it, but I think I sent you the link, but MACC, or maybe I didn't forward, I think I did forward it to you and to Karen, but MACC has some more courses that are coming up. Did you guys get that email today?
I didn't
see it.
I did.
I know I forwarded it to you directly. You guys, as members though, you didn't get it? You
I
did?
got it.
Oh, okay, all right. You didn't see it, Brian?
No, I didn't. I can take a little. No, I checked everything today.
Not on this meeting.
Because you should have been put on the list, you know, when I sent everything in July for membership, so you should have gotten one. But if you didn't, I tried to look. So you didn't think you did, Jim?
Not on this email. It may be on another one I can't get at for myself.
Okay.
I don't think I'm 99.99% sure I didn't.
Well, do we have any budget for people to go to the fall meetings?
Yes, so we have, I think, I don't think, nobody's gotten anything this summer, right? So I think we have $300 for training. So, there's, I don't know if you looked at the classes at all, but there's certainly some. And then somebody was saying, I don't remember who asked, was it you maybe was asking about, they have some online webinars. Yeah, and I don't remember what they charge for those, but probably less than going to their courses.
I think we talked about that the last time.
Yeah.
I did look online.
Yeah.
And we don't get lunch, so it's really cheaper.
Excellent. The lunch is sumptuous.
So anyway, you should look those things over, and then we should maybe try to talk about it next week if there's one that particularly you're interested in, just in case, just so we know, how many people are gonna go. And then basically, if you wanted to do it, you can either, depending on the timing, you can either pay for it and get reimbursed, or we could, if we get a check cut in time, then, we can put it in, so. But we kind of have to spread it out a little bit, so. But we also, last year, I think we got to the end and we still had money to at least to cover it, so, we definitely want to use it when they're available and it's something you're interested in.
I think I'm too busy this fall, so you guys can.
I've gone to
Couple
a couple
less.
recently, so.
Their schedule never works with mine, it kills me too, because I'm
What?
dying to go, but their schedule never works.
Oh, really?
I think last year was my son's birthday. Their webinars are great, but sometimes they're like at 10 o'clock in the morning, which is
Oh, did you
wonderful
do-
if you have a full-time job. No, I never get a chance. I always want them to give their webinars at nights and weekends, because
Yeah.
I don't know how to
You
bring
would think that they would do
commissions
that,
available
because-
days. Well, I think a lot of their commissions have available time.
Yeah.
Mm.
But commissions are trying to get more younger active people involved. It's, why don't you put your classes when they can take them?
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
But regardless.
Yeah, well,
But
take a
I'm
look at,
interested
I'll
to see
see
if
if
it
you
might
didn't,
actually work.
right, if you didn't get it, I will
somehow.
certainly forward it to you, what I got, but I will want to look into why you didn't get the email too, so.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I like to do things during the week, because in the weekends, there's too many people out there, it's too crowded, so you stay home on the weekends.
Well, see, it works both ways, right? So, they probably try to, sort it out for everyone.
Can we move on to land protection?
Sure.
Do you want to talk about the pipeline? Or
Yeah.
perhaps Brian does?
Yeah, well, so, yeah, that's definitely one thing that we need to talk about. I was going to attend a meeting with Brian and Maria last week with Dawn, and honestly completely forgot it wasn't the dog. I did have to pick up medicine for the dog,
Yes.
because, I just had errands and started doing them and completely lost track of the time.
You were missed, but it was, there wasn't.
You were able to be productive?
Somewhat. Yeah, there wasn't much. Dawn has a meeting this week, if I'm remembering correctly, with some of the local, some of the other local towns and discussing those next steps and how we move forward. I don't think we have the answers yet for who's actually going to be, if we're going to go and contest it, who's contesting? Are we contesting as a town? Are we contesting as a conservation commission? Are we contesting individuals? Are we contesting as county, a city, how are we going about it? I don't think that he has those answers yet. And he was hoping to find out more this week. I just need to follow up with him too and see where he's at. And Carol, some of the reasons I had talked to Carol a while ago about possibly drafting something for the selectmen, for them to review on how we would kind of move forward. But I wanted to talk to Dawn first and see if they wanted to drive things more from that level rather than us kind of pushing things to them and not trying to step on their feet, trying to coordinate an effort and make sure we just come through with one. I meant to make copies for everybody. I brought one copy, and I can send one to Carol too. The town of Townsend.
I have that.
Okay, their Conservation Commission one.
Yeah.
They just sent one from their Conservation Commission. Some of the grounds that we have, they have some new grounds too. It's fun reading. Every day there's a new reason to really, really hate this project. Really, really hate this project. And this one, it's fun. Kinder Morgan quotes. In their filing, they have a lot of quotes from this article that's written, and literally the name of the article is Reaping the Benefits, and it's all about monetizing, the whole frack gas boom right now that they're going through, and how the U.S. can be a world leader, and how they can get into major markets and monetize it, and how they can make it this huge industry, and they have to hit now
while the markets are good. But of course, their whole purpose is, no, Massachusetts has a real need for this, and we're gonna take this land by eminent domain to fill that need. But they're quoting the article that's, hey, let's export this overseas as fast as we can, and reap it in now. So that was a fun one that Townsend and other people hadn't
And
looked at
Townsend,
that one
like
so much.
Bolton, basically said there's no benefit to,
It's not
Where's
at
the
all
town?
to the town.
and Townsend has 2 compressors being proposed, I guess, which I'm not sure that I guess they must know that from the pre-filing. I didn't think that they had completely identified where those spots were yet, but in addition to this one, Nancy Case sent one to me today that was a landowner.
Oh, from an individual, yes.
And she really liked it because it talked a lot more about the impact, or the sort of the impact to the land. She felt like, and again, her own, I don't want to speak for her, but if you read this one, it talks a lot more about the energy issue, and maybe not as much of the impact to the land,
Right.
which she liked this one because it talked about, this is a landowner who was saying, as stewards and guardians of natural habitat, drinking water, and visually appealing resources that exist on our property, and in recognition of our private ownership rights within the community, in an absence of any federal permitted rights, we do not give consent to enter upon the land for these purposes. And then they kind of go through why they haven't given that consent, and a lot of them are things that we've sort of
They're great.
thought
Yeah,
about
awesome.
as well, that they, they haven't, for an example, was that they have not been informed about or assured, that a timber harvester who would be hired to clear any route, where it was going to be, and they weren't informed, whether there was any structures, including stone walls, retaining walls, leaching fields or whatever, if it was going to be damaged in any way, that it would be rebuilt or restored, and mitigated. And they weren't informed, whether there would be any monetary, something
Oh,
about monetary
yes.
value for any trees
Yeah, the
lost,
foresters estimate.
Yeah, the
there was,
forest, right, and how they would come up with that amount. So basically, the whole problem that we had with the survey, they really outlined pretty well. So,
How many vehicles, that's
How many
if
yeah.
they're gonna use vehicles, they won't tell me if they'll use vehicles, they won't tell me how many used vehicles they'll use, they won't tell me what types of vehicles, where they're gonna enter the property. I mean, this guy was just like, are you kidding me?
yeah, so I think these letters start coming in, we have to decide, do we reiterate the same points? Do we have other points? How do we find the uniqueness of Bolton in any other way that we want to create? And again, do we do that as a conservation commission? Does the grassroots group that's formed,
Right.
Do they do it independently? Do the selectmen, who are also looking at roads and other impacts, do we only fall under that one umbrella? So that's kind of what,
Yeah,
I guess
that's
we're
exactly what
waiting
I'm
to
trying
get
to
some
figure
further
out.
input.
As far as the local group, I've not told them, but I've even suggested to them too, that they should really go on their own to file it as individuals. Because it gets them out of a lot of the different town arguments too, and it shows, it's nice for FERC to get, here's a group of individuals and here's their local government. So it's kind of one of those, I'd love to see what they're gonna do, any information you need from us, please ask us, but go ahead and file on your own, and then
And then the one
Where we
parcel,
fit in.
that has been shown that they're proposing to go through, although again, we don't know if things have shifted or changed, is we co-own with the trust. So really,
Yeah.
we should coordinate a little bit more directly with them if we are gonna comment on that parcel in particular, or even in that
There-
Randall Road region, because that's something, that we co-own it. I mean,
There'd be an interesting one to talk to, because that's when I've been collecting letters and god awful, for partially that reason, that they're gonna get so many letters, that if we write it, we should really touch on something unique, because many of them just reiterate. Like I said, it was really nice with that new one with Townsend, it was like, oh, they didn't bring up the article, and they brought up the mapping systems with the other thing that they threw out that
Right.
other places hadn't, so they at least touched on some new things. Oh god, I have no idea what I was.
with the Conservation Trust?
Oh, yeah. That's not one I've seen, that it would be interesting to approach the Conservation Trust, and of course to work with them too, but it would be interesting if they would send a letter on their own behalf too, because that's not an organization I've seen. There's anti-pipeline organizations, but it would be nice to see, here's an organization that formed, we raised money specifically for saving these lands, we worked really hard, we've been doing this for so long, how dare you, this is why we're opposed to it, you know, this is why we preserve this land, this is all our private money that went into getting this land. It would be interesting for FERC to get it from a group like that too, that's a pre-established nonprofit, had nothing to do with, you know, they didn't come into play when the pipeline came into play, they've been here forever. They're outside of town government, yet they have a really big stake in their whole mission. This is completely anathema to their entire mission, right? This flies in the face of everything they're set up to do. It would be interesting for them to get their point in and at least have that on a record too.
So I haven't
But I'll
been
let
as
them.
involved as you have, but the first meeting I went to in the school auditorium, Bob Cohen had made a great comment, which was it him? No, actually it was Larry Delaney who said that, you know, we didn't, people in this town didn't work hard to protect land just so that you could have an easy pass.
Exactly.
You know, and that there was, and it sort of came up in the meeting that another possibility would be to go along the highway.
Right.
Has that been discussed anymore?
Well, it has.
It sounds like they didn't want to do it simply because it would be more expensive and more.
I know,
Right,
I know
it's
Kate Harvey
difficult right
mentioned
away.
it, but I didn't get the idea that she was adopting it as her position.
Well, some other legislators have, I
Right.
would say.
Right.
Because at the meeting that we attended, wait, I don't know if you attended that in
The-
Lunenburg. Were you at the Lunenburg? No, you weren't at
No, I wasn't
Lunenburg with me.
Lunenburg, go ahead.
So at Lunenburg, you know, alternatives were definitely brought up by a lot of people, and they said, you know, we've just met with Mass DOT, and we've just gotten some positive, you know, interactions going with them, and so, you know, we will be looking at alternatives. However, the other comment that was made by someone from maybe Lunenburg or around that area was, well, or maybe the question was first asked, you know, how long did you spend coming up with this route? And the answer was like, you know, a couple of years, you know, so we spent a couple of years. So then the question was, okay, but you're gonna file with FERC in September, so between, this was a meeting in July, I think, and September, you'll have had 2 months to consider alternatives, and that's what you're gonna put in your pre-filing, you know?
Yeah.
So that certainly is something I don't, and you've looked at probably more letters than I have, whether they've touched on alternatives, you know, I mean, again, in Bolton particularly, you know, there's the other line already that goes through, you know, towards Clinton. So we have some particulars, you know, that you might decide that we wanted to.
It's difficult, yeah, and that's, you know, that's a big one. A lot of people will be arguing that we need convenience too. Is that convenience sake? But it's weird. I shouldn't say it's weird how FERC has to look at it. Tennessee Gas, they basically are trying to go by the, you know, the need-based, that we really need this. Those other routes we would like to look at, but some of the other alternatives, some of the things that FERC can't consider, which is kind of difficult right now because there could be alternating, I mean, TGP is saying there's a demand for this, they need this gas, they can't live without it. And what we're trying to say is, well, you know, there's about 6 or 7 other companies that have plans to make up for any energy shortfalls, would rather consider those. But that's not something that FERC's gonna look at. They're not gonna look at competing plans. It's just gonna be, is there a need? These guys can fill the need, they're filing, you know, does everything they're filing work?
I actually got the impression that if somebody else filed, that was something that FERC does look at.
Right, and that's, Larry, I think at one point it suggested if we were gonna put something in early on to FERC was to, one of our unique complaints could be that they had moved up their filing process to almost a month and a half. That as we're learning of the project and as we're organizing and trying to get information and seeing how it will affect us and, you know, polling our communities to see what's going on, you're just moving the process up fast enough where we were supposed to have more time to put this together and to look at this, and why are they being allowed to speed the process? And the answer is they're speeding up the process because they're afraid of, there's other people that are trying to get in with competing processes and they want to have it all done ahead of time. But you know where that goes.
Could the speeding up be because they want to reduce the opposition?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it, and you know, that's part of it too. Yeah, because the opposition's getting organized too. But there's
And competition.
an Algonquin line. I think they're very close to filing. I mean,
Oh, really?
there are companies.
And these other companies would have propose different routes, you think? or the
Correct,
same?
yeah, there's different possible plans out there. There's an interesting one now. You know, you'll get into the environmental arguments too, but if you get by the environmental arguments, you worry about just cutting through the land, you know, you can go back and forth. There's a guy that has the liquefied natural gas tanks outside of Boston, a number of them, and he's proposing just basically filling them when it's cheap and selling back, you know, at a profit. And the infrastructure's there. He's like, I have the tanks. I'd love to use them for this. It's fairly easy to hook me in with the system. There you go. There's our shortfall. I'll make decent money off it. You know, not a huge profit, but I'll make good money. I'll make up our shortfall. Hey, just let me do it.
So the strategy of just stalling Kinder Morgan could be a good thing, just because it gives the opposition, the competition, a chance.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting thing to look at. It's tough to even say in a public meeting because we're on record too. But you know, the more you look at it, the need just isn't there. Like they can't prove the need. It's and they're fine. Look at the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, not Department of Agriculture. What was the department that put that?
Oh, Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, the secretary.
Yeah, you know, it's a beautiful letter.
Yeah. Did I send you guys that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But just that.
Or did you find it?
No, it's
You may
in
have
the
found-
filing.
it's around,
I've
yeah.
seen it,
Yeah.
The need's just not there. It's just not enough of a need, and it's such a bad impact opposed by so many towns. Any rational person would be like, well, don't. If you have other options, you know,
Yeah.
and they're this opposed, and you know they have a bad track record as a company to begin with, the need they can't prove. This is a stupid plan, but this is America. FERC might just pass it because they're paid off. I mean, they have political cohorts. They don't really care. They're getting letter after letter after letter saying, this is why we don't really need this. And it's just, yeah, okay. Richard Morgan has never lost a FERC filing.
Really?
Now, you know, that panel changes over time. There's a lot of political pressure from our politicians, but every politician we've talked to along the way is, you know, they've been opposed to it too. They'd rather see competing proposals come in too, and what else is available. But it's just moving right along.
Are there any other proposals that are proposing using the highway right away?
No, I mean, well, we're telling them basically saying, where's your alternate proposals? You know, we want to see them, like, and we'll throw out stuff like the highway. It's not even that they're saying, well, we looked into running it along the highways and that's why this isn't gonna work. We looked into this. You know, theirs is just, we looked at it, this is the best way to go.
Yeah, I'd love to see the
what I heard was
legislature
we
say, you have to choose a path along the highways or show why you can't do that.
Right, well, I think that's what everybody wants, is for them
I
to.
thought from that meeting at the beginning in the Sawyer Auditorium, their reason was that it was just too expensive to go along the highway.
Right, which
That wasn't a real
well, no,
reason.
that was one of it. It was, you know, it's a big expense. I think there were some issues with, there's only so much right of way on the sides. You can't always go down the median. There's only so much right of way on the sides. There's some issue, because I think a lot of the sides drop off, if I'm picturing some of our highways. I think they were saying.
There's also, I think in the Lunenburg meeting, they said that more than really down the highways, and I could be wrong if it was a Lunenburg meeting, but that more than looking down the highways, they were looking at other utility lines, you know, like so,
Right,
you know, where there's already cuts, you know,
Yeah.
there's already cleared areas, you know, whether it would be, could go through
Right.
there.
Why they can't fix existing, if just repairing their existing lines, they'd make up for the shortfall. They have about a 10% loss on old lines right now. And again, that's the FERC thing, there it is. You know, we want to make up for this shortfall, so we're going to put this whole new line to make for it, you know. Well, you have a bunch of lines, tell you what, just dig up, fix your existing lines, boom, shortfall's taken care of. No need or convenience. And that's nothing more than convenient, just fixing the existing lines rather than building new ones, right? So there's your convenience factor out the window. There's not a need, you fix these, here it is. Dig them up and fix your existing. That's the one where it's expensive.
Is it possible to replace their existing?
Sure, make them bigger, they can use, you know, more up-to-date,
Yeah,
more up-to-code
there is
stuff.
a reason
Make them
against
bigger,
that.
replace things. Why not?
There's one particular benefit to doing it that way, in that when you're talking about pipelines or refineries, it's one of those instances where there is an economy of scale. It's much cheaper to have a pipeline that's twice as big than two pipelines
Correct.
the same.
Yeah. But it's also much cheaper to lay a brand-new pipeline than it is to dig up and fix your road. And the taxes they had to pay on the road, because they depreciate the value of the asset, what they had to pay the town originally, they've rolled that down to almost nothing. Now they depreciate the asset down.
Didn't they?
Regardless, it's still carrying the same amount of natural gas. It brings them the same value and profit. They degrade the line. So if they had fixed existing lines, then boom, that asset goes back up. They increase their taxes. Now they've already rolled their taxes down to almost nothing. They have they don't want to fix that line. It's more expensive to fix it, and they've already reduced their tax burden to nothing. Why bring it back up?
Seems to me like there's an area for negotiation.
Well, it seems to me like
If we want to encourage them to do that,
well,
then we can
we're
make an accommodation.
we're putting that forward, and that's a lot of stuff people are throwing at FERC, saying, why don't they just do this? Why haven't they looked at these lines? Why
Well,
can't they
if
just
the
do
tax
this?
situation makes it too expensive to do that, then let's talk about the tax situation.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the thing is I think if we, the taxpayers in Massachusetts, as it is right now, we're supposed to pay for this line, then why don't we have more say in where it's gonna go? Kinder Morgan's saying, we need this, it's so necessary, and we're gonna put it in, here's where we're gonna put it in, and you have to pay for us to put it in. Well, if I gotta pay for you to put it in, calm down a second. If it's my $4 billion, I'd rather you invest it in fixing your existing lines. But they don't really care. They just don't care. We were trying to get a list, this was the other fun one too, of all the homeowners and abutters. Where's the stupid line going? Because we can't get a map still. They file with FERC, and we still can't get a map of where the stupid pipeline is going. There is an index on the pre-filing that lists every single homeowner that is affected, every single property it goes through. Great, let me see that index. It's a confidential index. Why is that confidential? No reason given. It's a confidential index. You can file a Freedom of Information Act, request to have it removed, to have it lifted. Most likely that's gonna take longer for them to approve you're lifting it, because there's no reason for it to be confidential. FERC will have already made its decision and approve or disapprove the project.
We get plans
By
of
the
this
time you find out.
condition that are accurate down to the foot.
Yeah. Well, again, it's there. They send an index. Here's every single property it's going to go through. Cool. Let me see that index. Well, that's confidential. Why? Why are you letting them hide it? And then you ask FERC, why are you letting them hide it? You really don't get an answer to that. I'm like, oh, you've already been bought and paid
On what
for.
basis is it confidential?
Thank you. Go ahead and ask.
Well, they say basically that it's not defined completely.
Right, and we
Until
have-
it's further defined and exactly where it's going, they don't feel everyone's
Right.
inputs, I guess, or,
That's-
location should be put
Let me
up.
say a few words before not answering that question.
Yeah. It's a very frustrating process, but regardless, that's where we stand right now. I'll follow up with Dawn too. I'll probably.
I don't think he's met yet with anybody.
No.
Well, this is only Tuesday this week, so I don't think he's had that
He
meeting.
had one
Either-
coming
Yeah,
up,
he did mention
yeah.
that to me, that there is one in the works, but I don't remember if it's this
Yeah.
week or next. I wonder, though, where the secretary's letter was very powerful, if we shouldn't at least send a letter to the secretary saying how much we appreciated
That's
the
a
strength
really
of
good,
that.
yeah.
Because I think at least if our legislators or politicians or, state government are hearing even that was helpful, it might be.
And they made a strong point about the APRs, the agricultural preservation
Yeah.
restrictions, and we have one of those for both, because Shachter Farm is supposed to be one of the areas that they cut through. And Shachter has an APR, and the secretary was very strong language about the APRs, which was fantastic.
Has anyone talked to the other candidate for state rep in terms of what his position would be?
I have
You're talking
not-
about Grossman?
Dolan.
Oh, Dolan?
Yeah.
No.
I believe they've all been approached by the mass plan people. Most of the time they'll put their information on their website, but I think that was, the last time I talked to them, they hadn't really gotten anything. And I could be mistaken to check their website, but we were asking that question, because they had gone to most of the candidates, and, some were kind of non-committal, some were, we're behind you, but way behind you, and it's kind of where it is.
The closer we get to November 4th, the less non-committal it is to their advantage.
Yeah, well, actually, it's probably more to their advantage to be non-committal till after the 4th, in which case they jump on.
Well, not only if they're the incumbent.
Right, well, no, what I'm saying is there'll be a lot of, there are some people, a lot of people talk about the governor too, who has been very non-committal about this whole thing, though he's been under a lot of pressure, and he's quietly waiting for his next job in Washington so he can go away, but he's not really come out.
He's eating.
We were hoping he would come out strong like the secretary and say, look, the people of this state don't want it, if we're gonna pay for it, we're gonna look at some other options first, and he's just kind of saying.
Secretary comes under him, you know, and.
Right. I mean, it's, you know, it seems like he does support this, but he's just been very quiet.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't really made any noise. And it's that same election thing, he's just playing up the
I mentioned Dolan because he's running for office in our district.
Right,
And
right.
And if he wants to have an issue that helps get him some support, it might be interesting if he came up with a position.
Couldn't hurt.
Is the League of Women Voters doing anything? Do we have that here? I can't remember if Bolton does that.
I don't know.
There's always a candidates
Oh.
night kind of a thing, isn't there, where they have some, no? All right, so I know Stowe does like the League of Women Voters thing.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Is there
I
any
don't
effort to draft a letter where all of these constituents sign it? Because, I mean, there's hundreds of
Right,
letters going
right.
out, but it would be nice to have one document that basically summarizes everything and says, all of these
Yeah, these
constituents,
are all the people that sign on to it.
we all sent you an individual letter, but we're all actually talking, and then go town by town even.
We all have different things to say, though. I mean, as a conservation
Yeah.
commission, we're interested in in the pipeline going through conservation land or not.
Well, in
We're-
wetlands and other places too.
And
Yes,
that might be-
but not everywhere through town, where other groups are interested in places where we have no jurisdiction. And it wouldn't be appropriate for us to say anything about. So different groups are coming from different
But
places.
I think that's what Don's kind of working on
I think you're
with the other
absolutely right,
towns and trying to at least get the lateral line,
That's-
the group who are, you know, who are on our same line so that we have a more unified voice. And it's not like we don't have a unified voice. I think there was one town maybe that hadn't really had much participation. I can't remember
I can't
if that's
remember.
changed or not, but initially that seemed to have been the case. But I think that is an intention. But so going forward, there's still the question, do we individually at this pre-filing stage want to send something from the commission? Are the selectmen going to send something? Is this larger group along the lateral line going to send something? Is the trust going to send, you know, so it's still a
Right,
question as to who's in, and so we need to, you know, keep on top of the timing and see where it's relevant to send it and when, you know, so I don't know, is there a time frame like where the pre-filing, sending something about the pre-filing doesn't make sense? I don't remember the
So
date.
I know it's somewhat the time. Now,
Yeah.
right now, actually, it's the 2 weeks after the pre-filing. Other
Yeah.
letters came in early. I can't remember how long they'll accept them for.
Okay, so we should look at trying to figure out that date probably.
That's
but
a really
but
good
now is
question,
the
yeah.
time. So between maybe now and next week, we should decide, you know, at least, you know, say that we feel as though, we can just tell Don if you're going to talk to him or I can talk to him, you know, we do think this is the time for us to send at least something about the pre-filing. We haven't quite formed our letter yet, but we, you
Right.
know, we would like to get something in by whatever before the deadline, you know, and get something going. Send something to the secretary. And then the other thing, you know, in terms of getting, again, more people aware of it, I'm still trying to decide, and I guess I need your input. I did reach out to Scott Duhame about leading a walk over off of Randall Road in the Randall Road area where the pipeline's proposed. And the date that we came up with, and I just threw out a couple of dates initially, the one date he said he thought he could do it was October 19th at noon time. Now, as it turns out, I actually have an engagement.
Oh, I'm gonna be away that weekend, actually, too.
So I don't want to go forward with that date unless some members of the commission can be there. So I need to find out whether people can. And if it's not the best date, then the other thing is that there's a date in November, I think it's November 8th, I want to say, but I have to look it up again. But that they're trying to get people all throughout the Commonwealth to hold walks that weekend, to have it all the same, you know, to just like, you know, the whole line, you know, is holding walks. So I haven't asked Scott whether he'd be available that day. I did think if we were going to hold one on the 19th, we still might want to hold something on whatever that date was, you know. It doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but just show some effort to be, you know, out there with, on the issue at the same time everyone else was.
And who's coordinating that walk?
Something on November to November.
Yes.
I think it's probably like the mass plan
Mass-
group,
Yeah, I'm
you
sure
know.
Mass Pen would have a link
You
to
know,
it, or Mass,
yeah.
or Frac Gas, Mass, one of
Right,
those
it's
two.
one of the, right. So, I guess, I don't know, if we're gonna do it on the 19th, we really need to get that publicized, you know, and start working on it, so I don't know.
I mean, it's fine with me, I can't go because that's parent weekend at Colby. Is it
Yeah.
parent weekend for you?
It's not, but it's, my parents are leaving that
Oh,
weekend for
okay.
Florida, and we'd already arranged to have a family,
Okay.
apple picking session.
Oh, okay.
can't
So,
say it.
but it's fine with me.
I mean, it may be that we do it later in the afternoon, in which case I'd be able to go, I don't know, but right now I'm hosting it, so I have to sort of
You should
call.
be there.
It would be nice, it would be peak foliage time, you know,
Yeah.
October like that, in October.
I don't, do you have any idea, Brian, whether that would work for you or your family? Or?
I don't have anything on my calendar for the 19th, but I don't see what we have for that weekend.
Yeah.
I don't know, because 19th is a Friday, right?
No, it's a Sunday.
Oh, it's a Sunday. Wow. I looked, oh, maybe I was thinking of September. Oh, that might work.
Yeah, it's a Sunday. I mean, Scott's really not up on the issue. He basically knows the properties, you know, so it really would need to be, if we're going to talk about the pipeline. It's possible that somebody from the trust, you know, I did mention it to Betsy Taylor Kennedy, and, you know, I don't know if she knew for sure if she could do it or not either.
I don't think the 19th works for me.
No.
No.
Mm, it's too bad.
So why don't I look at the date of the, that the statewide group is doing it.
Just to remind you, I think it's November 9th, though, that the Bolton Harvard 7-mile walk thing is going to take place, whether that makes a difference in the 2 days in a row.
Mhm.
Wasn't that November 9th? I
Um,
thought that's what your email said.
Yeah, because I don't think they had, I didn't think, originally I didn't have a date, they were talking about the end of October, and then they must be, the last one I sent out
I
had a
think
date.
it was,
Okay.
yeah, Sunday the 9th.
Okay. Well, let me look into the dates, I'll communicate by email with you guys on it, because even if Scott went out with somebody, myself, or if somebody, whoever could be there that weekend, the one that is going on, and kind of went through the trail system and just made sure that we were familiar enough with it. That's one of the properties we spent some time in last winter, and the trail system's confusing in there, because it's marked in a lot of different ways, a lot of potentially illicit markings, you know, with like maybe hunting,
Possibly,
you know, which
yeah,
also
yeah.
would be potentially hunting season if we're doing, it might be just before, I don't know when bow starts.
I thought it didn't already start.
I know it started in New York, but I don't know here. I don't think bow season started here. I'll have to look that one up too.
This is a hard
Probably good to know.
It's what?
Before we go deeper.
Harvard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, November 9th, that's it, yeah.
Okay, so the Harvard one's November 9th, so we'll look at not doing it the same day as that. Okay.
Okay, are we done with pipelines? Should we move on to,
Got these, yes.
two gifts, Lamson and Paulson?
Yeah, so I don't have any new of Paulson. I'm sorry, I do just keep carrying that one on the agenda, but at some point I'll try to coordinate us getting over there. Lamson came up, I didn't know whether Martha Remington might come in tonight or not. She sent me an email that, I forgot to make a copy of the map. There's a parcel of land, did I send this to you in your packet email?
I don't recall it,
No?
no.
Okay. I'll forward you the email with the map and parcel information. There's a woman who she ran into that she knows who is interested in gifting her parcel of land. I think it's mostly wetlands. I think it's mostly, I don't believe it's adjacent to any other land that we already own. It is part of a hog swamp, so the big area between
Yeah.
Quaker Lane, 495, and Berlin Road. And I think it's off of Quaker Lane. Not directly adjacent to 495, I think it's another piece in between. So I think she was just wondering, you know, feeling us out, whether we might be interested. So I'll carry, I didn't have it asterisked, I'll carry it onto the agenda again next time, and I'll try to get you the parcel information and.
Okay, I don't know how many acres.
I think it was around 8 acres, but I'm not sure if I'm remembering that completely correctly. In addition, next meeting I will put on also, but just mention it tonight, because I haven't had a time to pull out the information. Yesterday, Paul Weatherby stopped in. Now, I don't know if any of you were on the commission at the time, but Marie must have been. So we purchased a conservation restriction on the Weatherby's land, on some of their land, that's adjacent to Bower Springs. And he said, he's been thinking about, there's another parcel that doesn't have the restriction on it, that he would like to sell, in terms of preserving it, but, he can't gift it, so he'd be looking to, for it to be a purchase. And, so I'll try to pull that information back out, since he just stopped in yesterday, and, I just said, it's a good time for us to start talking about it because of, again, the budget process and the town meeting process and all that comes along before you even know it, so even though a town meeting wouldn't come up until May, if we needed to prepare for that, we'd need to be preparing through the fall and early winter. One other part to that would be if we thought we were going to try to apply for any state aid, which we received when we purchased the restriction the last time, the open space and recreation plan needs to be completed. So Janet and Liz and I were talking about that today. So Janet's feeling that we may need to also put in our budget to hire for professional services to get someone to at least do the paperwork part, maybe the mapping itself, but we work with them in whatever format they recommend we do it to get our map of what parcels are important.
It is 5 years overdue, right? Is it 5 years?
No, it's not 5 years overdue. I think it's probably more like, because it was 2005 was the, wait, 2005. The plan was 2005, and then they extended it for 2 more years, so it would have been 2012.
Oh, when it, okay.
So I think it's just 2 years. Yeah. So that's another thing we need to think about. Now, and again, if I'm recalling correctly, and I don't know whether it would work for us or not, but I think that you can also get some state money to update your open space and recreation plan if you are filing for the land grant. And again, I don't know how that timing works out. It may not be exactly how we want to do it, but
so if you're applying for a grant to protect land,
there's also some money that the state has to help you update your open space plan, but they only do it if you're applying for the land grant too. And I'm not sure what happens if you don't get your land grant, like if you're not eligible, or they say that, there's not enough money to go around, or we didn't, we didn't have any money this year, to even, I don't know how that quite works. So I think we need to think about putting it into the budget, because we won't really have that information probably for some time.
Where does it about, you said, does it about Bower Springs? The
Weatherby restriction that we
that's right.
protected already does. And this is a parcel that they kind of kept. I believe what he said to me yesterday was that there was one parcel that they kept out of it that was behind his house, because they weren't sure whether they were
so behind the house, I was trying to think where, what side.
It was more behind the house. But I have to pull that out.
It's beautiful
It's a
back
nice
there.
area, yeah.
So I told him more than likely, we had a lot of new members, people would probably want to come out and see it, so I'll get it on the agenda officially next time with some information for you, and then we can talk about whether we want to set up a site visit or.
That's nice.
okay, that's enough.
Oh, I had.
That's great, we're done.
So want to see if
This is a light night, is that what you said?
Yes.
Well, if it worked for.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Do you want to see if times that we could,
Yeah.
any questions?
Sure, do you guys want any questions for us, or comments, or
Are we off the clock?
should we go, can we go off the TV?
Well, it's still part of the meeting, so, I mean, if you want, you can talk later. I might still come out. I suppose if you want.
I've got a question on membership. So I know you just approved an associate member. Are there any positions left?
Oh, of course.
So there's one commission position, and then we don't have a limit on associates.
Right,
In
and
the,
Liz just became a full member, and we're actually still not,
So we still don't have 7 members, we still have one more position.
so we have one more for a full member too. And
is that for the 2 or the 3 year
3.
position? For the 3 year?
Yep.
There's Bob and Ian.
So if you're interested in becoming a member of the commission, you apply through the selectmen, send a letter to the selectmen, and then the commission typically makes a recommendation. If you want to be an associate, then, I didn't quite get it on the agenda, but Karen had sent an email saying she would like to be, made an
And what
associate.
is the associates role then? They just can,
Basically just a
To
non-voting
come
member.
learn,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, you can come, you participate, you can ask questions, go on site visits, you just don't get a vote. It's about the only difference.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean,
So Jim
some of the
started as
members,
associate.
Jim started,
Associate,
you can
yeah.
tell your
and so you
experience.
don't
but-
have the commitment, if like we travel a lot for work sometimes.
Well,
Right,
again,
right. Yeah, if you don't have to worry about making a quorum. I started as an associate member too, but it was just to see,
To learn.
yeah, can I be able to do this and
It
whatnot.
took a number of times for me to be here before I felt at all confident in my competency. to-
Right, right. Okay.
Right, yeah, I didn't feel like I understood the topics well enough to vote.
And so to do that, then we would just send you an email saying maybe the associate's a better fit for us at this time.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and certainly Steve, if you're interested in the trail stuff,
Yeah,
about
he's
that.
I think
That
he's
would be
definitely interested in that, because we actually do some maintenance on the Annie Moore Trail
So we
behind our
spend a lot
house.
of time with it.
Yep,
With
And use
chainsaw and-
all the other ones as well.
Yeah.
so, but we really would like to fulfill getting our full group too, because it's 7 members that we can have, and so sharing sort of the workload, which, like Brian's kind of taken on the pipeline, keeping up to date on that, and Janet does a lot with, last year we did a lot of walks and natural history stuff.
In the vernal pool.
And Jim's been coming out, pretty regularly on on the Century Mill Estate, the 200-acre subdivision, so helping keep tabs on that. Maria has her area that's behind her, so we've done some walks and stuff, and, everyone's kind of has their different areas that they look at and different interests, and Liz has just joined us, but,
And we
it's
still have,
very enthusiastic, so we're excited.
am I forgetting somebody? Don't we have 2
Lori?
openings for?
Lori's,
Lori.
Oh, Lori.
right, currently just, probably until December, she's not typically available. And then, so there's 1 position.
Okay.
And what is the meeting next week on the 7th? What's the difference?
So the main thing is that we try to go the 1st and 3rd of the month.
Okay.
And because we didn't have quorums, and because it was summer and we had some vacation times and so forth, and the way holidays fell, we had 1 meeting in July, we had 1 meeting in August. And so to get 2 meetings in September, we had 5 weeks in September, so we picked having another meeting.
Okay, I just didn't know if I missed
Yeah.
something about.
So now it looks like for October and November and December, at least the first meeting in December, we'll be going the 1st and the 3rd. And that way, it's good because if you are traveling, that, 1st and the 3rd is when I'm gonna have those meetings. So if you have any flexibility, then you can say, I'll be there for those, or, it's come up, I can't be there.
Great.
Now, do you interact a lot then with the permitting side here when people are getting construction permits and things like that? Do you get called in from them?
If it touches upon something within our jurisdiction, if it touches upon the wetlands,
Yeah.
or then, yes, they have to come before us to file.
Yeah, so like if you come next meeting, we have a project that's been continued since July because they were actually also in the process of filing with the planning board, but it's an assisted living care facility out behind Condyne, the commercial building on Main Street
Oh,
here.
okay, yeah.
And so, they're looking for wetland permits from the commission. And so, but we also are interacting with like the planning board and the zoning board on some others. We might send comments to
Okay.
those other boards about the project. So, from that side, and then the building permit side, where somebody actually comes in with a building permit, really, they usually come to me in the office first, and they don't come in directly and say, can you sign off on my building permit? So they'll come to me, and if it needs to be filed, then it comes to the commission.
Okay, right.
Except for sometimes there's rare ones that I don't necessarily know, I have to send people to talk about it.
All right, great.
All right,
so you can
thank
adjourn.
you. So I think we're gonna adjourn.
Nope, okay.
We're done.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
I mean, I saw you.
So I finally got approval from